What's up, Shredders? Thanks for tuning in to today's video with the California Surf Academy. I'm Alec, and today we're going to talk about how to walk your longboard so you can start hanging 5 and hanging 10. So if you're brand new to longboarding, or maybe you've been doing it for a little while and you're just trying to get to that next level, this video is going to be for you. We're going to start off talking about where we position our surfboard on a wave so that we can start to walk forward without the nose going underwater. We're going to talk about why that positioning is so important. And then after that, we'll get into the techniques of how to actually position yourself in those parts of the wave. So that's things like the fade turn, the stall, and angling on the takeoff. After we cover all that, we'll go, of course, into how to actually cross step and walk up and down the board. And then at the very end of this video, just a quick segment on board selection and kind of fin choice, things that'll really help you shorten that learning curve as you start learning to walk back and forth on the board. So without further ado, let's just drop right into it. The most important factor when walking forward on your board for a nose ride is going to be where you position yourself on that wave. You want to make sure that you are in the middle to the upper half of the wave, meaning about halfway up or up near where the lip is breaking. You also want to make sure that you're staying close to the pocket being the area of the wave where the lip is breaking and the area of the wave that is the most steep. If you find yourself too far out on the face, what we call the shoulder, you're gonna realize that there's not enough water moving underneath you to keep your board from tipping under. Now, why do we position ourselves so high up on the wave? Well, when you're high up on the wave, you have a couple things going for you. First, all that water that moves up the face of the wave creates a tabling effect when it hits the bottom of your board. If this is your board right here, and this is the water moving up underneath your board, as it hits the board, it's gonna refract and shoot off the sides of your board, creating this continuous tabling effect of water. When you have that water underneath you, you can really push down on the board without fear of that nose going under and purling. Okay, as you move farther away from the pocket, you're soon going to realize that there's not enough water underneath you moving quick enough to give you that tabling effect. So that's why you need to stay close to the pocket. Another reason for staying close to the pocket is because that breaking part of the wave as you move forward is soon going to be breaking over the tail of your board. The idea is to have the back of your board stuck into that breaking part of the wave, so as you're moving forward, getting that tabling effect, the lip is actually pressing down on the tail of your board, which also helps to lift the nose up a little bit so you can stand on the front and push it down without, again, fear of nose diving or purling. So if you find yourself getting a little too far forward down the wave, out of the pocket, you're gonna want to walk or shuffle back, readjust, and then get yourself back in the pocket. Let's take a look at a couple clips so you can see what I'm talking about. Closer look at one of my waves that really shows you the tabling effect of the water moving underneath your board, as well as the lip hitting the tail, all working together to help give you lift and position you correctly as you walk forward on the board. Right off the beginning here, you will see that I never drop low on the wave, okay? I'm always staying in this halfway mark, or at least somewhat above it. As I start to turn my direction to the right, I begin to walk up. I do a little stall here, which we'll cover in the next segment to get myself into that position, but for now, just focus on where my board is on the wave. Again, you can see it's about halfway up, maybe even to that upper third. As I start to walk forward, my board starts to lift even more. The reason it's lifting is because, again, when waves come and you're riding them, this water is moving up the face of the wave, okay? So it's moving up the face, it's hitting the bottom of my board, and you'll see once I really get locked in right here, once I'm on the nose, this water, as it hits the front of my board, starts to shoot off the sides, creating that tabling effect. There's basically a huge table of water hitting the bottom of my board, giving me stability. So all this water that you see right here shooting off the side of my board, that's that tabling effect, okay? You'll also notice that here's the lip, okay? It's breaking right behind me, even a little bit in front of me, which is kind of a sweet spot when you're trying to nose ride. So this is kind of the area you want to be in. Again, that water's hitting the bottom of my board, giving me enough support to put all my weight on the front, and then this lip, as it starts to turn over, it's coming and hitting the back tail of my board. So my tail, this is a 9.5 foot board, my tail is stuck somewhere back here, all right? So all this water that's folding over on the wave is pushing down on the tail, which is lifting the nose up. Combine that with all the water from being in the pocket, moving up on the board, it's giving me enough lift to stand up there with both feet hanging 10. All right? Right here, you'll notice the board lifts even more. This is because this part of the lip starts to really hit not only the tail of my board, but the middle part of my board. So it's creating that seesaw effect that's really gonna lift my board up. So watch where the nose of my board goes right here. I just lifted about a foot or so, and now you can almost see the underside underneath my board. That's when you know you've got proper lift. Again, look at where I am on the wave. I'm high up in this upper half. I'm close to the pocket. The pocket is right here. I'm right in the pocket. And then out in front of me, here's the shoulder. So here in a second, you're gonna see me step back because as I'm moving forward and I start to get speed, I'm gonna outrace this pocket and get to a part of the wave that's a lot more slopey, a lot more flat, which isn't gonna let me lift as much on the nose. So I'm gonna have to put my weight back towards the tail of the board. So if you watch here in a second, I'm still in the pocket, and now you can see my board starts to drop again. As it starts to drop, I realize, okay, this wave's not staying as steep as it was earlier. And again, look at how much of my board's back in the wave, but I'm realizing that pretty soon the tip of my board is gonna go underwater if I don't step back. So come back to a 5, and then I just start to walk back. You can really see how much slope there is here on the wave compared to how much steepness there was right here when I was kind of in the heart of the pocket. So as that wave starts to get slopey right here, I walk back, and then I do just a little cutback. Okay, this video we won't be talking much about turns or cutbacks, but that's how you'll readjust to get back into the pocket of the wave. And then I go right back into the pocket right here. So just keep in mind, again, the tabling effect, all this water hitting the bottom of the board and shooting out the sides, as well as the tail being stuck right in the lip so that it presses it down, that help giving me lift. It's those two principles that are really going to help you with nose riding and walking forward. You just want to make sure that when you're walking forward, that you're walking forward in this upper half of the wave. If your board is down here and you're trying to walk forward, it's going to be very unstable, and your board's quickly going to rise and send you out the back of the wave, or it's just going to nosedive because you don't have enough wave underneath you to keep the front of the board from going under. Alright, now that we've gone over the importance of positioning and where to position, let's talk about how to get into that position. There are 3 common ways to position your board right off the bat, right off the takeoff, when you're trying to walk the board and get to the nose. Those 3 ways are the fade turn, the stall, and angling your board right on the takeoff. The fade turn, one of the most common ways to set up for a nose ride or to walk forward on your board. You'll see all of the best surfers at your local break using the fade turn at some point or another. Basically what that is, let's say you want to go right on the wave. You're paddling into the wave, you'll actually angle your board to the left before you even get to your feet, so your board starts to track left. As you get closer to the pocket of that wave, you stand up and you whip your board around and you turn right. What that does is several things. First, that whip around slows you down, which means it's going to keep you from outracing the pocket, so it keeps you in that steep part of the wave, which, as we talked about earlier, is a pretty important part of the wave if you're trying to walk forward on your board. The next thing it does is it raises you up high up on the wave. It keeps you from dropping all the way to the bottom of the wave and allows you to stay in that middle upper half of the wave. It's very easy to do. Let's take a look at a screen recording I made to help further explain this. Let's take a look at this fade turn right here. As you're paddling into the wave, you can start paddling in straight, but eventually if you're planning to do a fade turn, you're going to want to angle your board to the left. The reason you're angling your board to the left is because the pocket or the breaking part of the wave is somewhere over here, so you want to get close to it so that you can set up to walk the board and nose ride. If you just took off right here and tried to go right straight away without slowing down and getting to the pocket, this wave is going to be too flat to give you that tabling effect. There's going to be no lip breaking on the tail of your board, so walking forward and then eventually hanging 5 or hanging 10 is going to be quite difficult without that nose going under the water. So you'll see here I start off straight, and then I kind of lean into my left arm to get that board to go left. As I go left a little bit, I stand up and I put all that pressure on the back of my foot. You can see all that pressure I'm putting on the back of my foot because
look how much of my board you can see as I turn it around. So almost 90% of my weight is on my back foot as I swing the board around. Another important thing to keep in mind is when you do stand up and decide to turn your board to the right or to the left, if you decide to go left and you're fading from the right, you'll notice that I'm looking the way that I want to go. I'm no longer looking this way, I'm looking straight ahead where I'm going to go. When I turn my head and look where I want to go, it's also going to turn my chest and my shoulders right there so that it points in the direction I'm going. For this particular fade, I kind of drag my hand a little bit. You'll notice that if you drag your hand in the water on any kind of turn, it creates kind of a pivot point, which helps you turn a little quicker. And as I'm coming out of that, all that pressure on my back foot, I then start my walk forward. I made sure to do my fade before I got too low in the wave. Right about here, I'm basically right in the middle of the wave. That's a good point to start your fade. Do the fade, and as you walk forward, you'll notice the board never drops below that halfway mark of the wave. This is going to put you in a great position. Now you can see that the wave is catching up to me, the lip's starting to break behind me, and I start to walk forward. You can see there's a little bit of lip in front of me starting to build up, so I know that this is going to be a good Noseride section, so I continue to walk forward all the way up into a hang 5 position, and hang 5 real quick before this wave kind of breaks around in front of me. Let's take another look at this next clip right here. This one's a little bit more of a drastic fade, I would say. I paddled hard. I'm way off on the shoulder here. The pocket is way over here, so I know that I really need to get close to that pocket so that I can walk forward on the board. So as I start to turn left, I'm already right here looking right, but my board is still going left. As I stand up, again, I don't let my board get all the way to the bottom of the wave. I keep it in the middle. So as I'm standing up, I'm putting almost all my weight on the back foot to just flip this board and turn it to the right. So I'm compressing on the back foot and just pushing down, and that's turning the board that way. My shoulders, my head, they're all pointed, my chest, they're all pointed in the direction I want to go. And now, boom, this wave is breaking basically right on top of me, right where I want to be. So I'm as much in the pocket as I possibly can be. You'll notice that right as I come out of my fade, I go straight into my steps. For those of you just beginning, you may find that it's easier for you to do the fade, kind of let the board set its rail before you start to walk forward. But as you get better, you'll be able to come out of the fade straight into a cross step. But there's no problem with just setting the fade, pausing for a little bit to find your feet, and then taking your steps. And you can see here I start to walk forward again. This wave is breaking basically right on my feet right here, which is a perfect spot to be. I get my way to the nose, and now that lip is breaking on the tail of my board. I'm in the steepest part of the wave, which gives me a lot of lift. Here's the lift. You can see the bottom of my board from that tabling effect, all that water shooting off the side of my board as I noseride this section, and I stay right in the pocket. Had I just stood up at the beginning of this wave right here and tried to go right, I wouldn't be in as steep of a spot on the wave, which means I wouldn't have the tabling effect that I really need when I'm trying to walk forward. So again, here's the fade, boom, go left, go right. Now remember, as you come out of that fade, you're pushing down on your back foot. Pushing down on that back foot slows you down, so it keeps you in position. It also helps your board rise a little bit further up the wave. Watch as I walk forward, my board starts to get a little higher on the wave, never dropping below that halfway mark, all the way up to the nose.
Now that we've talked about the fade turn, one of my favorite ways to set up for a noseride, let's talk about another technique. This one is called the stall. The stall is very easy. I use it when I can't fade, maybe because somebody's right in my line, or maybe because I've outraced the wave a little bit and I need to slow my board down to let that pocket reach back up to my board. A stall, very simple. All you have to do is apply weight and pressure to your back foot. This is your board, this is the nose, this is the tail. When you apply weight to the back of your foot, or to your back foot rather, and on the back of the board goes down, the front comes up, and you're basically applying the brakes. The reason for this is when you do this, it's kind of like a snow plow. You're hitting all this water and it's slowing you down. If you just trim across the water, you go fast. If you want to slow down, you push down on the back foot and you stall. That's going to allow this pocket of the wave to catch up to you, and when it catches up to you, you start walking forward, which is going to put more weight in the middle to the front of your board, which is going to then allow you to keep the speed with the pocket as you move forward. Let's take a look at some of these screen recordings to get a better idea of what I'm talking about.
Here's a great example of the stall right from the get-go of the wave. You see I'm paddling into it. Nose goes under a little bit, I just bring that up some. And instead of angling my board left to do a fade, because I'm already in a pretty steep part of the wave, I'm already close enough to the pocket, I'm just going to take off straight. And as I take off straight and get to my feet, watch how the front of my board, as I stall, starts to point up. That's because I'm pushing down on my back foot. Right about here, the front of my board starts to lift. Look how much my board just lifted up. My board nose was down here at first, now it's up there. That's because I'm just putting all my weight back on my back foot. As I'm putting weight on my back foot, because I'm angled a little straight, or because I'm kind of pointed more straight, I'm kind of shifting my weight to my toe side rail to help whip the board to go right a little bit, but it's essentially just a big stall. Still pushing down on the back foot, letting that wave build up in front of me, letting this part of the wave start to break. And right as this wave builds up in front of me, I set my rail, I start to walk forward. If I had just taken off on this wave, gone all the way to the bottom, and tried to go right, I would have just outraced the section. The great thing about a stall, not only does it slow you down, but it helps rise you up, or it helps lift you up on the wave. So when you take off, you would take off, and if you just went straight, you'd go all the way down the wave. But as I take off, and it starts to go down the wave, I push down on that back foot, and the board just kind of stays in the middle, and then it starts to climb up a little bit higher right there as I walk forward. Let's take a look at the next clip. This stall, a little different. I do start off a little straighter, but you'll notice as I pop up, I almost kind of whip it back left. So it's not quite a fade turn, it's kind of just this little shimmy to the left right here. See, now the board's pointing left, but what I'm really doing is just applying a lot of pressure to my back foot to, again, lift that board up. See how you can see the entire bottom of my board right there? That's because I'm really pushing down on my back foot. And what that does is just kind of hold me in place. It just slows me down while I let this wave just kind of build and catch up to me. And then I just start walking forward and I find myself right in the pocket. So a stall can be used on the takeoff, like you just saw in these two examples, or it can also be used further down the wave. Let's say right here, if I wanted to slow down, all I would have to do is walk back to the back of the board, push down on the tail once again. That'll lift the nose up, that applies the brakes, right? So I'm slowing down, this pocket would catch up to me, and then I could walk forward again. So a stall is very versatile. It can be used on the takeoff or in between nose rides and turns to set you up for your next nose ride on the wave.
One thing you want to be careful about when you stall is pressing on the tail too hard and for too long. Depending on the wave you're riding, a stall can either be a very light tap of the back foot, or if you have some speed on maybe a faster wave, you can really push down on the back foot without the board slowing down way too much, or worst case scenario, getting sucked out the top of the wave. When you stall, if you push down way too hard on the back foot for what that wave requires, it's the brakes, and that wave is just going to go directly underneath you. It's going to suck you up to the top of the wave, and then the wave's just going to roll underneath you, and you're going to fall out the back of the wave. So just make sure when you're practicing your stalls that you're experimenting with pressure and how much pressure you need to apply for that wave. If you find yourself, again, falling out the back of the wave, it probably means you're stalling too hard and for too long. And now that we've talked about the stall, the final way to set up a nose ride at the beginning of a wave is as simple as angling your board right or left. What that means is as you're paddling into the wave, your board, if you already know you're going right, your board is already pointed slightly right on the wave. You would usually do this because maybe you're a little behind the section, meaning that it looks like that wave, that peak is actually going to break a little bit in front of you. So you don't need to burn speed. In fact, you need to keep your speed so that as you're walking forward, you get put right into the pocket of the wave. Same deal if you're going left. If you want to angle your board to the left and you are sure you're going to go left on that wave, slightly angle it to the left so when you stand up, all you have to do is walk forward. Sometimes you do need to throw in a little bit of a check stall. If you start going too fast, maybe you mistimed it just a little bit, just to slow you down some. But a lot of times, if you angle correctly, when you're taking off on the wave, you can stand straight up and just start moving forward on the board and find yourself in the perfect spot for a nose ride.
If you look at this clip, you can see that I'm already pointed very, very right. I was surfing this day. This wave was only breaking right, so I knew that's the direction I needed to go. and I thought that I was maybe just a little bit behind the peak and needed to kind of catch up to it, so I decided to angle my board. You can kind of see a little peak feathering right there. You can tell kind of by the steepness of this wave and how it's prolonged from here all the way to there that it's going to kind of run. So I wouldn't have wanted to fade this. If I had, it would have set me up behind it. So what I do is what I do is angle. And you can see when I angle here, I actually do a little bit of a stall. So I'm angled right, so all I have to do is stand up. I could have just started to walk right there, but what I wanted to do was get just a little higher on the wave. So I push down on the back foot slightly. You can see the nose of my board just kind of picks up right there. You can tell because you can see the bottom of my board. That's how you know it's a stall. But it's just a quick stall, and immediately after the stall, I'm moving forward. Because I knew if I had stalled for too long, I would have been sucked over the back of the wave. But it did just kind of let me rise up a little bit. Anytime you stall, your board is going to rise. So I just combined that with the angle and then just walk straight forward. And as I walk forward, I found myself right in the spot. In fact, the lip was breaking a foot or two right in front of me, which is kind of right where you want to be if you have speed to get through that section. So this was right in the right spot for that wave, and I was just able to put all my weight up on front of the board and ride through this whole section. Eventually, as I got in front of it, I realized it was sloping out pretty quick, so I decided to step back and just keep riding the wave. Let's check out this next example right here of another angle. This one I'm going left. I just wanted to show you guys the left so that you can understand it if all you have to surf for left. But again, I knew this wave was going left, so my board's already angled left. You'll notice it's not completely parallel to the wave. It's angled left, but it's still pointing forward. If you're paddling a new wave and you're just completely pointed to the left, chances are you aren't going to get it. So anytime you angle your board, it still needs to be pointed slightly towards the beach so that you have some forward momentum as you paddle into the wave. On this one right here, all I had to do was stand up, and I might have done a little light tapping of my back foot just to kind of lift that nose. You can see the nose lifts right here. Right as I begin to take my step, I like to kind of do that just to bring the board up so that when I put my foot down, it's kind of coming at my foot. But really all I did was start to walk forward. Again, I stayed high, never dropped low, stayed really high on this one and just walked my way up to the nose. Same principles apply when you go right or left for any of these maneuvers.
Part 3, the final part of this video, is all about cross step. This is something I get a lot of requests for, a lot of questions about, is how to actually cross step. And now that you know where to cross step, how to set your board up correctly in that position of the wave to start cross stepping, we can actually talk about the stepping. So first off, cross stepping, a lot easier than people think. It's something you can practice on land and in the water. When I was young, I learned on land because I just couldn't surf that often. So you find me walking the wooden 2x4s in my backyard, just cross-stepping forward, cross-stepping back, visualizing the wave, pretending I was surfing. Looks pretty dumb, but if you put in enough time to it, you'll notice the difference the minute you hit the water. The key with cross-stepping is to build the muscle memory. When you're first starting out, I would suggest just trying to nail that one step, that first step, the initial step. If you feel like you can do 2 on a wave, go for 2. You'll notice that some parts of the wave, depending on how fast it is, where you're positioned, will dictate how many steps you actually take. So for example, on a shorter, faster, steep wave where maybe I don't have enough time to set up my board and wait for that section to build, I'm probably going to take one quick step up to the nose, one big one, and just find myself right on the nose. If it's a slower, smaller wave, and I've got time, I've got a long wall ahead of me, I might take 2, maybe 3, but generally 2 is where I stop. Alright, so there's a couple key things when you are learning to cross step. The first thing we'll talk about is our stance. It's not just the stance you have when you cross step, it's kind of the stance you're going to have on a longboard when you're trimming and just kind of waiting to do a turn, that kind of thing. What you want to make sure you do is take your front foot, whether that's your right foot, if you're goofy footed, or if you're regular foot, your left foot will be your front foot. You want to make sure that front foot, those toes are pointed slightly towards the nose. You don't want to stand with your feet completely parallel to one another, where all toes on both feet are facing the rail. So what you're going to want to do is take that front foot and you're going to move it just slightly so that those toes are a little bit more angled towards the nose. What this is going to do is open up your hips and open up your knee so that when you decide to do your cross step, you're not catching your back leg that you're bringing forward, you're not catching that on the front knee, and you're actually able to take a much longer step. That way you've got a little bit more variety in your steps, so you can step long if you need to, or if you want to just do a smaller step, you also have that ability. That's one of the most important things to cross stepping, is making sure that front foot is pointed straight, or not straight towards the nose, but angled slightly more towards the nose. The next thing you want to take into consideration is when you're bringing your back leg up in front of the front leg, where you're placing that down on the board is going to be very, very key. The whole reason you're getting a tabling effect is not only the positioning of your board, but also where your weight and the pressure through your legs is distributed. So in order to really amplify that tabling effect, you want to make sure the inside rail of your surfboard, the rail that's touching the face of the wave, is engaged in that face. So when you step forward, let's say you're going front side on a wave, you take your back foot, you bring it across the front one, and when you put it down, you don't put it right directly above your front leg. You actually put it a little off of the stringer, closer to the rail, the toe side rail of your surfboard. And what that's going to do, that pressure, that weight is going to engage the rail. It's going to lock the rail in, really creating that tabling effect even greater. When you put the foot down, you come down with your toes and the pads of your feet first, and then the heels. A lot of people I see will come down and just put the outer side of their foot down, just the side of their foot down, and then roll their foot flat. It's not what you want to do. You want it on the toes and the pads of your feet. You don't want to come down with your heels first. You want those toes and the pads to engage first. And again, that's going to engage the rail. It's going to make you more stable because of that tabling effect. You're going to be a lot more locked in. It's really important to remember that the cross step isn't so much of a cross so much as it is just a step forward. You're just standing in a different stance than you would normally if you were on land, stepping forward. But if you keep your feet in those positions and just think of it as a step forward, it'll make a big difference. You don't want to put that back foot directly in front of and above your front leg. You want that back foot, when it comes forward, to come a little bit more off to the toe side rail of the surfboard. If you're going backside, it's kind of the opposite. Your weight's going to naturally be more on the heels, and what that's going to be doing is engaging the heel side rail into the wave. So that's what you would think of if you're going backside. All right, and what I like to do as well is take my front foot when I go backside and keep that one a little closer to the inside rail of the wave, that heel side rail. That way, when I move my feet forward, once my front foot gets back in front in my regular position as I come out of a cross step, that weight's still on my heels, so that rail is still engaged and I'm locked in. If your rail's not locked in and you're in a steep section, your board's just going to start tipping and you're going to fall off to the side. Before we are done with this video though, I just wanted to kind of touch on some of the equipment that you'll want to look for in order to just make cross stepping and nose riding that much easier. Obviously you want a board that's more specific to nose riding. Those can be boards that are a little bit more parallel, a little wider. The noses are a little bit more what we call trash can shape, so they're just a little wider. You'll see a lot of longboards that have a smaller, narrow nose, and those may be good in certain waves and for surfers of a certain ability, but if you're just starting out, you want to make sure your nose is going to be wide enough. Another key factor for board selection is going to be the rocker. So rocker in a board is how much curve that board has. So we have something called nose rocker. Nose rocker is going to be that first, foot and a half to 2.5 feet of your board, and how much that board nose angles. If this is the nose of your surfboard right here, this is the tail. You can have a flat surfboard like this, generally harder to nose ride, but if you're learning, you want a board with some nose rocker, so the nose will kind of look like that. And what that's going to do is when you're standing on top of here, on top of the nose in the front, it's going to help that nose keep from diving underwater because it's kind of flipped up. It kind of goes over the top of the water. Another principle with board design when looking for a nose rider is also going to be the tail rocker, which is the same thing as nose rocker, just moved back to the tail of the surfboard. What that's going to do is increase the drag, which helps pull you higher up on the wave, because remember, you want to be high up on the wave when you're cross stepping or nose riding. It's going to help slow you down. That drag acts as kind of a natural stall, so it'll keep you in the pocket a little bit more. And believe it or not, with that added tail rocker, you're actually going to be able to turn that board a lot better when you're ready to start doing cutbacks and get back towards the tail to readjust and get back into position. A couple of other design features that are important to take into account would be the bottom contours, specifically nose concave. Nose concave is basically a small dent, a shallow dent rather, in the nose of your board. It can span a foot, 2 feet. Some boards have it going back 3 to 4 feet, depending on the drasticness of the nose rider. But it's essentially if you took a spoon and you held it upside down, that concave, that contour of the spoon being upside down, is essentially what concave on a surfboard is. And what that does is when the water hits the bottom of it, it tends to give you a lot more lift and stability when you're on the nose, so you can really put a lot more weight and pressure into your feet onto the front of the board without it actually nosediving and going underwater. The other thing you want to take into account is a board's weight. If you get a single fin longboard, chances are it's going to have a proper weight for nose riding. That's just kind of the style that those boards are made for. If you're riding a high performance board, say like a Stewart surfboard, something along those lines, it may be a little bit lighter than some of the more proper nose riders, but it could still work if the rest of the outline is parallel and wide, with a wide tail. I prefer single fins for my nose riders. I think most people do. It's kind of the original way that nose riders were designed. You don't really need 3 fins in the back there if you're trying to nose ride. And what I like are fins similar to this one right here. This is a JJ Wessels. I believe it's a 9 3/4 inches fin. It's very wide here at the base, and it has some rake as you move up towards the tip of it, which I think actually helps the nose rise. It helps kind of pull that board back into the wave, and it's not got a lot of flex. It's a pretty stiff fin, but it still turns very well because of this rake as well. You have other fins for nose riding, like this Captain Fin Joel Tudor model. This one is a 10 1/4 fin. I don't ride this one much. I used to ride fins very similar to this, but you could tell it's got a lot less rake than this yellow Captain Fin. Okay, it also maintains a lot more thickness all the way to the tip of the fin, so better hold for your nose rides. Your board won't side slip as much. That's when the tail starts to spin out on you when you're nose riding. And it's, like I said, a lot more straight, a lot more up and down. It has a very unique feel when you turn, and perhaps it is a better nose riding fin. It's not quite my style anymore, but wouldn't be a bad get for somebody starting out. As far as the size of your fins go, I'm pretty heavy surfer on my back foot. I put a lot of weight into my turns and my stalls, so when I have a fin that's too small, sometimes it tends to pop out or slip a little bit on the wave. So I like to ride fins at a minimum 9 3/4 up to, I'll ride a 10 1/2 in my slightly bigger longboards, but I ride a 9/6, 23 inches wide, 3 inches thick with a 10 1/4 fin most often. You have other fin choices as well as you start to progress. This is kind of a thinner flex fin. It's got a wide base but gets very thin right here in the middle up to the tip. It has a lot of rake, so this fin's gonna let you turn a lot easier, but it's gonna be a little more squirrely as you walk up on the board. That board's gonna wanna go kind of tip side to side a little bit more as you walk forward, where one of these wider base and wider middle portion fins is gonna give you a lot more stability and a lot less tippiness as you walk forward. Alright y'all, I hope this video really kind of illuminated some of the key aspects of cross-stepping and getting up towards the nose. Stay tuned in the future for some more how-to videos, mostly related to longboarding tips and tricks. We're also going to be featuring some videos pretty soon about some of the more historical figures in the surf culture, just interesting people that I grew up hearing about, lots of cool stories. If you liked this video and you want to go ahead and subscribe, please do. You can follow me on Instagram at the California Surf Academy. You can find me at my website, thecaliforniasurfacademy.com. You can follow my personal Instagram page at @rockrise. And just remember, y'all, take everything you learned in this video and practice, practice, practice. Practice those cross steps on land more than anything. It's really going to make a huge difference, really developing that muscle memory so that by the time you hit the water, whether that's on your weekend or after work, your body's already warmed up, it knows what it wants to do, and you just have to take what you practiced and learned on land and put it into the water. We'll see you guys next time.